I've gone ahead and continued working on my Kinestasis animation here. You can see I've updated my cue sheet, taking notes, making changes, adding new columns like the file name that I'm dealing with for each individual shot to reflect what I've done in After Effects. So this is actually a really good practice to get into. It's going to help me plan, help me be a little bit less random, especially going to help me get some practice keeping track of what I'm doing for a situation where maybe eventually I'll want to work on an animation project with a team. So this could be a really important tool for communicating with other folks that might be working alongside me on the same animation. All right, so let's take a look at some of the changes that we've got here. I'm going to play back my sequence. So I went ahead and fleshed out some of these sort of jerking up and down motions in my first two clips. You can see here we're about to jump to the second clip. One change I'd like to make here is that transition, which right now is a jump cut. I'd like to do a crossfade or a dissolve where I fade from the first image into the next image. So we'll take a look at how to do that. I'm just going to let the rest of the sequence play here. And so kind of the story I'm imagining here is, a work stoppage on a construction site, some workers trying to talk to each other, communicate with one another about some sort of a problem, eventually figuring things out, and then getting back to work. So you can see here I'm kind of going back and forth between all the workers at different speeds, changing some of my basic 2D transform properties, and then they're going to get back to work building. Okay, so let's take a look at this fade. So between these two shots here, I want to, rather than a jump cut, I want to fade. So I want to be able to see both frames at the same time. I'm going to zoom in here right around the transition point. And so in order for a fade to happen in After Effects, I need to have some overlap between my layers. And I've already got that a little bit right here. So I want to go ahead with both of these layers. I'm going to highlight them just by clicking on them, holding down Shift, and then clicking on the second one. On the keyboard, I'll hit the U key. That's going to show me all of the properties that are keyframed for both layers. So I can see here, looks like both layers have some position keyframes on them. I have gone back and forth between the graph editor and the layer editor. So you can see here I'm making these changes so that we get that sort of almost like they're moving with momentum, kind of up and down and moving back a little bit at the end of a movement. So what I'd like to happen here is, let's see, it looks like we're at about 9 seconds, 23 frames. My second image starts, and right now it's covered over by the first image. So here's that little tail of overlap. Looks like it's maybe about 15 frames long. That's about what I would want in terms of doing a fade. So what we're going to do is put some keyframes on this top layer, which right now is sitting over the second image. And we're going to drop the opacity from 100% down to 0. That's going to have it fade away rather than the abrupt jump cut transition. So let's go ahead and hit T on the keyboard. That's going to bring up the opacity property for this layer. I'll go ahead and click the stopwatch right at the point where the layer beneath it is beginning. And then I'll drag over to the end of my upper layer, and I can hold down Shift if I need to. I want to snap right to the end. And so by the end of that upper layer, I want the opacity down to 0. And now you can see as I backtrack, we're getting that fade transition. So you can see right now, my upper layer, this one is 100% opacity up until this point. Now it starts to drop and reveals that layer that's underneath it.